Bird. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Summit at the Aerie. This is your introduction to playing Derevi in 2024. We're your hosts, the known Derevi players. My name's Jay Collins. I've got NVCon and Clay Q here with us. Go ahead and introduce yourselves, fellas.
Hey, I'm MVCon. I've been playing Derevi for a bit now. I've been playing cEDH for a while. I have the more turbo-y version of the deck, and that's all I got for that.
I'm Clay Q. I've been playing Derevi, well, as long as I've been playing cEDH. I miss my Flash Hulk, you know. But apparently it has been determined that I am the Staxier version of the deck, even though I really wouldn't consider myself Stax. I do play just a handful.
For clarification, I'm the apparent mid-range, just the Goldilocks between the two here. And for context, Clay is in the Pacific Northwest area for a meta, and then Envy and I are in the Midwest region for metas, just because tournament metas are so regional, to give you some perspective of reasons why we have things slotted in. But we like to start here with just going over our lists and the various things that we have, the things that we have that are unique, the things that we have that are all the same. So we'll start at the top. Very simple. We all play Derevi. It is at least it's my favorite commander. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah, it's
I would
definitely one
assume
of my
so.
favorites.
Since we're doing this. Um, it's a very simple card with a lot of ability to flex your personal playstyle. The cards that we are all on, only note, is about 60% of the deck. It is, you can really play this however you want. If you look here, we'll start with Battles and Planeswalkers. You'll notice that Clay and I are on Invasion of Ikoria, a direct-to-field tutor from either the library or graveyard that finds a non-human. Some people find that non-human restriction pretty restrictive and don't run it for that reason. Is that why you're not on an Envy, or do you have other reasons?
Yeah, so the main things I want to really be tutoring, like, yeah, Emil's like the biggest one, but I want to be tutoring Spellseeker. That's like the main focus of my list because it gets like Crop Rot, Neoform to be able to go into Emil, and you can't get that off of Evasion. And then Cannon is also another big thing, and Delny is another big thing. All three of those I cannot tutor with Invasion.
All very true. And then I'm the only one on Tezzeret the Seeker, which is just a redundant artifact tutor in your deck. It is a second copy of the One Ring. It is a second copy of Birthing Pod, Agatha Soul Cauldron, etc. We tend to have some pretty powerful artifacts, so having a second one to, out of your singleton deck can increase consistency, but is not a necessity. However, creatures are a necessity. We absolutely need those. We are a creature combo deck. An overall majority of the things we're all on, things like Birds of Paradise, Delighted Halfling, Esper Sentinel, Bloom Tender Febro for mana production. You got Grand Abolisher, Kutsul for your silence effects, Ranger Captain in there as well. Kinnan and Delny, as you mentioned, we can touch on those in a moment. Very important to our game plan. But we also have some flex slots here. I'm on a combo package with Agatha Soul Cauldron, so I've got things like Walking Ballista, Haywire Might, the terrible card Sleep Curse Fairy. Absolutely love it. If you're not on Soul Cauldron, never run it, please. Heliod Suncrown to go with the Walking Ballista combo. Lauren to help deal with effects that I don't want, that are artifacts or enchantments. And then Clone of Choice for me, Spicy Auton Soldier, actually a recommendation from Envy after Punt City 3. I've been really liking it so far. Still a testing slot. And then also Selvala Eager Trailblazer out of Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I think is a fantastic addition to the deck, doing almost everything we need to do. I will also note that anything you see in the spreadsheet in gold is a package on Moxfield. It's titled cEDH Derevi Core, available for you to brew with as you wish. So, Envy, what do you got in yours?
Okay, so probably the biggest thing for my creatures is probably the most standout is Haven Interrupter. That is a slot I am testing currently. I'm using it as a somewhat of a creature counterspell that can also hit on Underworld Breach. Underworld Breach is very big in my meta. Um, and it's also a very good like it stops counters, it stops like anything you could ever want. It just plots the spell and it's very good. Other than that, I am on Boromir at the moment. These two are not. I use it as a pseudo. I use it as a stacks effect and as a pseudo silence effect. I think both of those effects are very good. It's very meta dependent though. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's very very bad. It's actually on my. I'm actually about to probably cut it here relatively soon. And then Fairy Mastermind. It's the only reason why I'm playing it at the moment is because it's an evasive flyer that can draw cards. It's probably also on my chopping block here relatively soon. It just isn't doing as much for me right now. Anything else? Kitesdale Larcenist is also a very good card. If you guys have not played it, I recommend doing so if you're in a blue creature deck. It's very good. Being able to hit up to 4, because you can target your own stuff. Creatures or artifacts to turn them into treasures and completely knocking them out. It's very, very good. You can hit commanders. You can hit uh, just like random dorks. You can hit combo pieces. It's been amazing every time I've played it.
I will add for Kitesell Arsonist, because I do love this card as well. Do not hit a Magus of the Moon or the upcoming Merfolk Blue Moon with that. It does not work. Your basic non-basics are still mountains. It's a layers issue. I don't have the time to explain that right now, but it's complicated, and unfortunately, it does not work. Learn that the hard way in a tournament.
Creature-wise, most of my differences are that I play several creature stacks pieces. They are very impactful in the metagame, and I also still play Preston and Felidar as a backup combo for my deck. Now, a big part of the reason that I still have that in is because Elish Norn, Mother of Machines. She is one of the best stacks pieces right now. A one-sided Torpor Orb. She shuts down every combo except the random breach combo that I can think of right now. And even the random breach combo probably doesn't like her on the field because they probably tried to make their mana with a with a dockside somewhere along the way. She is a wonderful stacks piece. I get asked why I play her because everyone's going to clone her. And if I'm getting cloned, then I'm playing the right cards. The reason I touch on this particular one is the combo with the Preston and the Felidar is that Ikoria for X equals 4 can win me the game. It brings me a new avenue to win with that. I also play Linvala. That's partially because of my meta choice. Somewhere else you might see Curse Totems being played, but for my metagame and the fact that I'm a creature-based deck, a big flying evasive one-sided beater is great to shut down all the Kinrith and Sisay players and Kennen players and every Thrasios that wants to draw all their cards.
Yeah, I think being that's the big appeal to this deck is being very. You can change out your flex spots for your meta specifically. Like there are cards that like if the meta was a little bit more mid range, I would probably be on Linvala as well. My meta is not that at the moment, so that's why I'm playing the cards I'm playing right now.
It's a great
Yeah,
option against Sisay, against Kinnan, any other creature combo decks you might find. And being one-sided, we're okay with that.
yeah. All of our decks play the one key combo with Emil. We all play a handful of clones. A lot of your creature choice is going to be based on how you want to win, what you want to do. So Envy's creature choices are a lot tighter. He does play Elvish Spirit Guide, for instance. He plays Boromir, he can sacrifice, and Spellseeker and Captain Sisay because he's streamlined trying to win. As we know, Jay Collins' list plays a bunch of weird creatures to feed his Agatha Soul Cauldron. I play some more stacksy pieces that are meant to get me in the winning position in the game. I also play the combo lines with Spellseeker, and then, of course, you can't forget Toski for our card draw. And my spicy choice of the week is Wandering Archaic. It's a pseudo-silence for those counter wars, and it's always impactful when it's on the board.
Yeah, I think that's I think Wonder Cake is also fine. If I think there's like more like Rogsai or potentially more of a mid-range meta, I could also see myself slotting back in Wonder Cake. I'm just a little hit or miss on the card. It really just depends. But I do think it's perfectly fine in this deck, especially being a creature that you can like Eldritch Evolution your Derevi into if you need to.
Yeah, we're usually very good at making mana, and being just 5 colorless generic mana is pretty easy for fixing. I have been on One Ring Archaic before. I didn't like how it was performing in my meta, but again, that's a meta call, so I think it is very acceptable, a good slot if it works for you.
My play there is it's my Aven Mind Sensor that doesn't die to Orcish Bowmasters.
Yep.
We do hate the Orcish Bowmasters, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking of Orcish Bowmasters and other creatures, our sorcery package. Not a great transition, but all of us have ways of getting creatures out of our deck directly. I personally believe it's the strongest thing in green. We have things like Finale, Devastation, Neoform, Eldritch Evolution, Wargate. These just straight up pull a permanent out of your deck, whether that's a creature. Wargate is straight up any permanent. You Wargate for 0 for Cradle. I Wargated for 2 for Soul Cauldron the other day. I mean, it could be anything. It could even be a boat, you know? Some unique outliers here. I'm on Green Sun Zenith because I like my green creatures. Kutzel's of Silence, Savala, and Toski are combo. Toski's card draw, Savala's combo enabler. If I need mana, I've got Halfling and Bloom Tender, like Kinnan to help finish a game. It's got options, and I think that being able to pull things out of my deck is the strongest thing green can do. And while green is not the strongest color in the format, I might as well lean into its strengths. Lastly, I have Arcane Heist. Take everything I said about green and throw that out the window. I'm here to play red and black cards now, and I'm going to play them from my opponent's graveyards. This also ciphers, so you can cipher it onto Derevi, which itself has flying. It's evasive, so you play this 4-mana sorcery. You copy someone's like Imperial Seal or something, and then you can maybe hit a card draw spell and draw that card because you get 2 spells out of your opponent's graveyards. If Narset can do it, we can too.
The only notable difference on sorceries here is I play Savine's Wreck, and I play that simply because I play Intuition combo piles. It's not really anything else to note. It is quite literally there to Intuition pile with. Occasionally, it's drawn in an awkward situation, and it becomes a ramp spell by hitting a fetch land, or a reanimation spell by hitting whatever creature they happen to have removed, because a lot of my creatures are below that 3 CMC mark.
Any sorcery thoughts, Envy?
I think the stuff that you mentioned is fine. I'm not on Green Suns because most of the green stuff I can hit Kinnan with it, but most of the stuff I also want to tutor for is not green. My Clone Effects, my Emil, Delny, Kitesail Arsonist, like stuff it just hasn't been working out well for me. That's why I cut it. And then Arcane Heist is on my radar. It's something I might test eventually, but I have a lot of stuff I need to test, and I only have so many flex slots, so it'll be on there eventually. And then I think the Intuition package is also very powerful. I do think I was on it previously. I'm not on it now. It's something I could potentially go back to as well.
Yeah. As we mentioned, it was something I tried out for a minute because I was also using it to fuel Agatha's Soul Cauldron things, because in an opportune scenario, it's a double entomb. But I found that it's fantastic, but Agatha's Soul Cauldron needs like 3 things, and getting 2 things is usually just not enough. So for that interaction specifically, I'll shout out to the Twitter people that call for Gifts Ungiven to be unbanned, but
Sure, yeah.
But it's intuition. You get an extra card to hand. It's fine. If I got that one extra thing, I'd be doing it a lot more often. But moving on to our instance here, we're on mostly all the same things. You will notice that Envy and Clay are on a lot more instance than I am. That's a playstyle difference, obviously. But me and Clay are on Angel's Grace, also on Mana Drain and Word Invention, along with our core package of Crop Rotation, because Guy's Cradle is a very key card in our deck. Enlightened Tutor, again, replace Guy's Cradle with One Ring, a very key card in our deck. Silence, Veil of Summer, Worldly Tutor, Cyclonic Rift, all classic cEDH staples. Archdruid's Charm, because it's a creature tutor. It's just an incredibly flexible card. You can get your Cradle to the field tapped. You can get a creature to your hand. You can exile an artifact or enchantment. You can even fight something if you want. And it's a one-sided fight, so you don't have to worry about your creature dying. That's probably the mode you'll use the least, but if you need that Oppo gone, you need that Oppo gone, Nexus of Fate is the only spicy card in the instant slot that I'm on. Turns out it's incredibly easy for us to make mana, as I previously said, and it being an instant means that I can cast that mid-combat. I won a game this weekend at a tournament because I potted my Esper Sentinel first thing into a Grand Abolisher, made a bunch of mana, drew 70 cards with the One Ring, did not draw the cards I was looking for, but happened to draw Nexus of Fate, cast that, and that was all I needed to close out the game. Sometimes you just need one more turn.
Yeah, definitely. I do think being able to cast stuff mid-combat is very, very strong in this deck. It's something very, very important to have.
There's a reason why a lot of decks are on Born Upon a Wind. Notably, none of us are, but
I mean, the
Flash is an
mid-combat
important-
cast. The mid-combat cast is why we both play Whir instead of Transmute Artifact.
Absolutely.
We play them with the intent of getting the same targets that we would with Transmute Artifact, but Whir allows us to do it in mid-combat with multiple taps and untaps of the same mana sources through Derevi, allowing us to spike that 10 mana Whir of Invention for a Chromatic Aerie much easier than if we had to sacrifice a 2 mana rock and pay 2 mana and then come up with the other 6 or 7 mana that you may need to transmute that into your Aerie and win the game.
You don't need the artifact on the field initially to sacrifice with as you do with transmute. You notice we're all relatively light on artifacts, none of us being Mox Opal style decks. But we can get into our artifacts in a moment. We still have more instants to cover.
Yeah, I was gonna say if Clay wants to go over his instance real quick, because my instant package is a lot different than yours.
Yeah, yours looks like just mostly answers and removal. I do notice your Noxious Revival as a very notable comment in there. But so I play Angel's Grace. It's a win con. It feels weird. I absolutely hate it, but it's that or another win con in that spot, and it has saved me from games with the split second tricks, and it turns one of my value creatures into an outlet. Which that would be the Fairy Mastermind Wingon. I play Ephemerate simply because that's a combo piece with my Intuition packages. It combos with Spellseeker to create a win line for me. It is a very good ritual with Derevi. It's a good protection spell. I'm currently testing Legolas's Click Reflexes. A lot of what happens in my metagame is, well, they like to remove my creatures, and I thought about, trying things that would save my whole board, but the reality is there's usually only one crucial piece on my board I need to save. So Legolas's Quick Reflexes gives me the benefit of saving my Bloom Tender and then turning around and using my Bloom Tender to kill the Bowmaster as it tries to kill my Bloom Tender. I play Path, I play Swords, so I was looking for any other 1 mana kill spell, basically. And I settled on Quick Reflexes. So far, I've liked it. I've only played a few games with it, though. Then you've got Intuition, and I could talk for a long time on Intuition. That is a whole nether ballpark, but there are 3 basic Intuition lines that matter here, and every one of it's Savine's Eternal Witness, and a card generates card X. Is Savine's and Spellseeker, and a card is a pile that can let you win, and the grand poppy, the one I love to play and I want to play every time, is going to be Savine's, Delny, and Spellseeker to generate the protected win line with Ephemerate and Silence.
Isn't Delny Stasis Savine's also a package?
It is, and that's because Stasis is Stasis. But
yes, it is.
Those are the 3 big ones. Are those 3 though? Because those are the ones that are going for wins.
Okay.
I've actually been looking at Snap, which is probably one Envy wants to talk about, because I've been looking at an Intuition pile for Ewit, Savine's, and Snap.
Yeah. I will note when I was on Intuition, my Intuition pile was, I think it's the most common is Gaia's Cradle, Savine's Spellseeker, because it grabs 2 of your combos, basically. I would just, or grabs 2 of your pieces, at least when I was playing it, because if they give you Savine's, you just Savine's back your Spellseeker, go grab Neoform, and then you flash it back, go get Guy's Cradle, or they give you the Cradle, and then you just flash back Savine's from your graveyard to go get Spellseeker, and vice versa.
And if they give you the Cradle, chances are that's how you're paying for the
Yeah.
Savines. So
And that was the package I was playing when I was on it.
Yeah, I definitely play it. I like the Delny package more because it's a protected win.
Definitely, I could.
They have 2 points of. They have 2 points of interaction, which is when you cast the Savines to bring everything into play, and then when you cast the Silence, and after that, it's your game to lose.
I gotcha. Okay, so the only thing I really probably need to mention, I need to mention Snap and then Shared Summons. So, because everything else is pretty self-explanatory. It's mostly interaction that I play. Interaction's good. A lot of my meta is stack, or like on the stack heavy, so being able to have interaction is very nice. Shared Summons is my preferred instant speed dump my mana into. It grabs 2 creatures, so it can grab your Emil, your Spellseeker, or it can get your Emil and your clone, so you can clone someone to be able to win from there. I won a game the other day where I would tutor up Emil, go grab a clone, someone had our Orcish Bowmasters out, and then I would go for my Emil combo, and then clone the Orcish Bowmasters to kill the table. It's very good. I've had a lot of success using that. But it's player preference, honestly. These two don't like shared summons as much as I do. I will acknowledge that, but I still think it's a very good card. And Snap is a combo with Eternal Witness, Guy's Cradle, and having 4 other creatures.
And Blind Obedience.
Yes, and Blind Obedience. Blind Obedience is the outlet, but Snap, Guy's Cradle, Ewit makes infinite mana. As long as you have 4 other creatures, because you can snap your Ewit back to your hand, untap your 2 lands, one of them being an island in your cradle, and then use the 3 mana to cast the Eternal Witness to re-get the snap. And then you dump the infinite mana into either an outlet, being like I play Thrasios, or Blind Obedience is another one.
All right. Well, with that, I think we can move into our artifacts, which should be relatively short because we're almost all entirely on the same artifacts. We all have the standard cEDH package of 0-drop rocks, Chrome Mox, Mana Crypt, Lotus Petal for me and MV, Mox Simon for me and MV. Clay, you actually cut Mox Simon last night.
Yes, for Mana Vault.
For Mana Vault.
Specifically.
I do find that Mana Vault has been pretty fantastic. Soul Ring, Birthing Pod, One Ring, Chromatic Orrery, we're all on. These are our big, quote-unquote, end-the-game artifacts. Birthing Pod, where a creature deck allows us to fetch any of our tools out of our deck to actually either finish off our combo or, prevent the table from winning so we can find the time to get to our combo. The One Ring, chances are you know what this card does. You've seen it in almost every cEDH deck out there. However, I do believe we are the best deck for it because Rogsai gets annoyed they can only tap it 1 time a turn. We can tap it an arbitrarily large amount of times a turn, and if you tap it 13 times, you kill yourself. So chances are you draw your entire deck. It's a free Adnos. And then Chromatic Orrery being a tech that we all got from Comedian when he played the deck for a hot minute, but somehow slipped past a lot of Derevi pilots. But we saw this and went, oh, yeah, that makes sense. It's a 7-mana legendary artifact, taps for 5, colorless mana, but you can spend mana as though it is of any color, and that applies to all mana you have. Unlike Agatha's Soul Cauldron, which is only for creature abilities, but it's incredibly good with Derevi. We can go over some of the combo lines with it in a moment, but it taps for 5, and then you can also spend 5 and tap it to draw. Chances are 3 cards. It's for each color you have. You probably have your commander out. You're probably drawing 3 cards.
Even if it's not drawing you 3 cards, it's still winning you the game because at that point you've gone infinite mana, infinite untaps with Derevi, and you're just drawing your deck.
Yep. For my spicy includes, as mentioned, I have Agatha's Soul Cauldron. I love this card. It's a great thing for a creature deck, I think. You can really just assemble your pieces out of nowhere. And also, if your pieces get removed without being exiled, you can just. It's also a way to get around Summoning Sickness. If I want my Captain Sisay ability, I'm not casting Captain Sisay. I'm getting her in the graveyard and putting the ability on a creature that's already not summoning sick. So I can activate immediately. And then Trinisphere, because I love to watch the light fade out of people's eyes when a turn 1 on the play 3-ball happens. It's a little masochistic, but it's a thing that we can play around because we make so much mana, and it's pretty good. We can't play around it as well as like Urza can, because Urza just turns it off, but we can be pretty good about it. I'm a big fan. Envy, your spicy includes are mostly just more mana rocks. You've got Arcane Signet, Felwar Stone, Talisman, all these 2-drops. Any specific preferences here?
So I will say, I will preface the reason why I'm on Felwar Stone and Mox Amber specifically. I forgot to mention this when we talked about it, but Felwar Stone and Mox Amber have the potential to tap for other colors of mana. So if you Gilded Drake a Najeela, that your Felwar Stone and your Mox Amber can pay for the Najeela cost to be able to win. Other than that, I cut all my dorks besides like 3, and I move mostly onto mana rocks as my preference for my speed. Mostly just because of Orcish Bowmasters, but that's my big reasons for including Felwar Stone, Mox Amber, and like some of the other 2 mana rocks.
Then Clay, the one you're on is Imposter Mech, which is radically different from anything else we've talked about so far. Obviously, clones are good, but feel free to enlighten us.
Yeah, so I play Imposter Mech because it is the clone that doesn't die. So I like cloning things like Orcish Bowmasters or Mayhem Devils or even an opponent's Kennen, simply because it doesn't die. It's not a creature most of the time, but it still gives me their static effect. It makes it harder to remove. In the case of the Bowmaster or the Mayhem Devil, I win the war between the two. I kill their Bowmaster, and I'm left with my Bowmaster still. They can't ping me dead. If I want the pinger to stay alive longer, I can leave it. If they're playing a Mayhem Devil combo to try to win, and once they start trying to kill me, I can either kill them or with the same number of pings, or I can kill the Mayhem Devil and turn them off. I can let them kill the rest of the table. It doesn't matter. That doesn't affect me. But my Imposter Mech is... It evades the simple creature removal that is so common, and the pings, the Niv Mizzet Perunes, the... Oh, I'm sure there's something else that pings things dead that I have to worry about at some point. I just don't know what it is right now. Yeah, that's why I play the Imposter Mech. It also creates a second artifact clone, which allows me to have 2 clones on all of my tutors, which gives me a decent odds to still have a clone in my deck when I draw a tutor and need a clone.
There's a
No
very
matter which
large
tutor it is.
mana value discrepancy here, but Auton Soldier is also an artifact.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's on my radar. It is definitely on my radar. The idea of 16 untaps is kind of bonkers. I don't see it as a win, but I definitely see it as a lot of value.
Yes.
Can you pull up Autoton Soldier real quick here, probably for people who don't know how funny this card is? As I had this played at me at Punt City 3. So it's a clone that makes it a non-legendary creature, but
And it has Myriad.
And it gives it Myriad. So when you attack with your Derevi, you make 2 other Derevis attacking 2 other players. So you get 2 untaps based off those ETBs, and then you get 3 triggers per creature that hit.
You get 4 actually if all your
4?
Drevies are swinging. Because you still have your original.
Including your original. I'm sorry. So yes, it is very good. We did not mention that earlier, but it's very good. It is also on my radar to put in. It's just I have to figure out what to cut.
I will note that the mana value is really specific here, 4 and 2 blue. It is the perfect amount for a Fabro Elder or a Bloom Tender tapping in response to a Derevi ETB. So if you can Bloom Tender turn 1 and you can bird turn 2, you can have this out on turn 2, and you can get those 16 triggers on turn 3, which is not bad, to say the least. One of your opponents plays a City of Brass, and suddenly they're in a world of pain.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a good card. I like it. The 4 and 2 blue is really easy. We used to run Consecrated Sphinx.
Yep.
It is a very easy mana to generate. It's a card you can play on turn 2 or turn 3 with decent hands. It's a card you can play turn 2 and do something with awesome hands. So the other thing I like copying with my imposter mech is other people's bloom tenders and whatnot, because again, it's protected from dying.
Honorable shout out to Machines God's Effigy as well. A very similar effect to Imposter Mech. Is double the mana at 4, but also inherently gives it the ability to tap for a blue. Not always relevant, but is an option for those that are considering it, even though none of us are on it.
Yes. I will say also, I gotta give credit to where credit's due. Credit to Nybar. He was the Garuda player I play against a lot. He's the one who gave me the Autoton Soldier and the one who cloned it against me in Punt City 3. So thank
Yep.
you to Nybar for doing that.
Makes a lot of sense. Moving into our enchantments here. This is where we have probably the most difference in a lot of things. Obviously, I'm on many more enchantments because I went from the mentality of don't feed Dockside to screw it, just screw it. But we're all on Mystic, Ristic, and Utopia Sprawl. Mystic and Ristic for obvious reasons. We're in blue. We play cEDH. They're in your deck. Congratulations. Utopia Sprawl, a little different. Obviously not an auto-include in most decks. Very good for us. It seems like a very slow turn 1 play to just enchant your land and pass, but it enables, if you have a follow-up land on turn 2, you get your commander out and you get another 2-drop because you can untap that 2 mana producing land with the ETB. So all of a sudden you have your commander and a Tyrannus Magistrate, or a Bloom Tender, or a Grand Abolisher, or whatever 2-drop you feel is necessary that is in your hand, you know? And in fact, it's such a good effect that you guys have doubled down on it with Wild Growth, which is the more flexible land, or more flexible land enchantment, with Utopia Sprawl requiring a forest to enchant, but you can pick the color that it generates when it enters. Wild Growth will always tap for green, but it can go on any land. And obviously having 2 of those effects makes your turn 1 play twice as likely, because you have 2 copies. Me and Clay are on Stasis, which is a classic Derevi card. It is not a card you play lightly. You don't just randomly throw a Stasis out there. For those that don't know what Stasis does, players don't get an untap step. It's the best stacks effect that exists. Everyone relies on an untap step. Seedborn Muse, yeah, it doesn't work anymore, no matter what. It's pretty fantastic, and with our untaps, we can feed these blue pips to keep it around. If you are in the event where you cannot feed it blue, do not cast this card. It is better being pitched to Force of Will. It is better being pitched to Chromebox, etc. It's very risky, but it has a very, very high ceiling, which is why we're on it. You can enable this with Delny. You can enable this with Vigilance. You can enable this with Smothering Tithe. A lot of things. It's very Derevi. Turning the game off is the most Derevi thing we can do, and this is our gateway. It's pretty fantastic. Big fan if you can't tell. Reconnaissance is something that I'm on, and I will not stop shouting to the heavens about it. But if I can spell it correctly, it's an enchantment that allows you to Mazavith your own creatures. Importantly, you can Mazavith your creatures after they have dealt damage. This untaps them. This still gets you your damage in. It doesn't remove the damage after the fact. You still get your Derevi triggers. And if you do this on a creature that makes mana and has vigilance, such as Fabro Elder or the new Selvala, if you have just Derevi, that creature, and Reconnaissance, that's 3 untaps for that creature. Chances are you're making 3 more mana, so that's anywhere from 9 to 12 mana, or higher, depending on how far you go. But, that's our mid-combat Word Invention. That's your Nexus of Fate. That's an Overloaded Psych Rift. It's all these things that seem really expensive, suddenly we're doing on turn 2, turn 3. And it's just insane value. Again, pseudo vigilance. It allows you to take all your creatures, and if maybe there's a creature that you saw that you didn't realize was blocking, oh, my bad. I'll just take that out of combat. Save your creature. And it also feels stasis lines because you don't have to burn your untap on the creature to keep it swinging. It's great. 1 mana, hard to beat. Survival of the Fittest, we're a creature deck, puts creatures into your hand, puts creatures into the graveyard. Doubly good for Agatha's Soul Cauldron. I've comboed off by assembling 3 things under a Soul Cauldron with Survival of the Fittest all in the same turn. Mid combat, do it all in response, don't cast any spells. Suddenly the table's taking infinite damage through Ballista. Or a Shard, because I really can't stand when I'm the only player at the table that doesn't have a Heuristic Study. Freed from the Reel for combo potential. Put it on a Fabro Elder. Suddenly you have infinite green and white mana. Put it on a Savala. You just have infinite mana, period. Growing Rites of Itlimoc, because it's second Cradle. It's a little slow, but it's honestly, flipping it with 4 creatures is really easy for us to do. And we like Cradle so much that it's honestly just good value. You can find a creature, put it in your hand if you respond to it with a top deck tutor, or else you're just looking at the top 4. I have killed a man with this before in a match. He had a Pact Negation, needed it, artifacts for that mana. This found me Collector Oof. I played Collector Oof. He died in his upkeep. He explicitly asked me, please don't cast Collector Oof when I reveal it to the table, and he had a bad day. Smothering Tide, Trouble in Pairs. We're in mid-range hell out here in the Midwest. I need something to punish and draw. I need to draw some cards myself. Drawing cards wins games in cEDH. Seems like a good time. Clay is on most of the things I am on. The only other spicy thing here is Envy on Copy Artifact. And I'll toss it over to you.
All right, so we were talking about how good clones are. We all have an agreement where we all think we should be playing at least 2 to 4 clones in the deck. I'm using this as my 3rd clone effect. It's very good. It copies your opponent's Wishclaw Talismans, which Demonic Tutoring is very good. It copies your opponent's Mana Vaults. It copies their whatever they metamorph. If they metamorph a Dockside, you can copy a Dockside that way. I've had that come up. You can all the great artifacts that are in this format is just on the table with it. It just gives me like a second choice for what I want to go with, and I have been liking it so far since I put it in.
I mean, why bother playing the One Ring when somebody else is going to play it for you, right?
That as well. It also copies the One Ring.
The One Ring is a good card that we like to see.
So we do it better than anyone else. I don't care if you have a One Ring. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go to town.
Exactly.
Wonder, if you copy artifacts, the One Ring, do you get protection? Yeah, you would.
Yes,
actually.
you cast the spell.
Yep.
Just like when you copy with Metamorph, you get it.
Yeah, I just didn't know the wording on copy artifact. And with that, we move on to our lands, and this will probably be our shortest section of them all because we're almost all on the same lands. Notably, the big ones are Gaia's Cradle. Obviously, creature deck, we make a lot of mana, we untap things. Gaia's Cradle is very naturally one of our combo outlets to generate infinite mana. Manamo, we generally have a lot of legendary things, whether that's Gaia's Cradle itself, our legendary creatures, a lot of our artifacts that we use, like Chromatic Orrery, the One Ring, these are Agatha's Soul Cauldron, these are all legendary. You can just, for the cost of 1 blue, do it again. You can use that as a ritual for the Chromatic Orrery and Gaia's Cradle, because suddenly you're making, you're spending 1 mana to make 6. We also have Ottawire and Boseiju. Automatic includes, if you're in cEDH, in the colors of blue and green. It's just not spell-based removal. And that's the only decks you're going to find running Stifles are going to be Niv Mizzets and Talions. So, or any low-color blue deck, maybe. As far as spicy includes go, I'm on Caverner Souls. I run a decent amount of humans, even though I'm on Invasion of Ikoria. Uncounterable Grand Abolisher is just really good. Emergent Zone, because having Flash is such a strong effect in cEDH, and with our land tutors, once you get Gaia's Cradle out, you kind of need like a backup thing to get, so that way that's not just a dead card. And you crop rotate an Emergent Zone, that's kind of like a build your own Born Upon a Wind in green. But other than that, I have the Triome. Some people might run a Surveil land in that place. I'll let Envy talk about that more. But The only other differences we have are our choice of off-color fetch lands, and Clay is actually a basic land believer, and there's nothing wrong with that. We see a lot of Blood Moon style effects out in the format, and having a backup so you can cast your spells is not terrible.
Also, White Plume Adventure for my basics. I will say, Emergent Zone has been on my radar, and so has Echoing Deeps. Both Echoing Deeps is the cave from the recent set that allows you to copy a card in a graveyard. These two have been on my radar as options for crop rotating, simply because they give me a way to use crop rotation to get my Gaia's Cradle out of a graveyard or somebody else's if mine's been destroyed by a Boseiju or something similar. And also because there are just a lot of utility lands that do see play. In the worst case, it can be a fetch land or it's a colorless land that comes into play untapped. Emergent Zone is a build your own Born Upon the Wind. Yep. What's that?
I was just pointing out what you said of you don't have to have it copy a thing. I'm sure some people don't realize that. If you just have it enter as itself, it is untapped, like you said.
Yep. So those are a couple utility lands that I've thought about for adding in. Otherwise, I play Ancient Tomb. Envy may have some more comments on that. It is a 2-mana land, and we like things that produce 2 or more mana because they are great for being untapped by Derevi.
Yes. The reason why I'm not on Ancient Tomb, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing it. Especially if we're playing my version of the list, where I'm playing a bunch more 2-mana colorless things. But my meta treats my deck more of like an Adnos style deck, and I get attacked out more often because of that. So untapping Ancient Tomb multiple times and is actively killing myself, and that's something I have tried to avoid. So that's why I'm not running it specifically. But like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing it. Only other thing I think I have 2 other things I have to hit on. I'm on Gemstone Caverns. These 2 are not. My deck is a little faster, like I said, so having the extra land come into play is very nice. And then we'll say I'm Exotic Orchard is the same thing, like I said, with my rocks. It's a land that can tap for not Bant specifically. It works with Najila. It works the same, or it's very good. And then the Surveil land is something we talked about already. Is something we're looking into playing. I think we should try at least playing 1 copy, seeing how it goes. I'm thinking about cutting Brushland for that Surveil land at the moment.
Same colors?
I'm not sure yet. I think it really just depends on how my list is looking. I think I'm more blue focused right now, so I might cut it for the green-blue one. But it really just depends on how it looks.
I believe we've covered a large majority of our outliers, if not all of them.
Yeah, I think we wanted to cover like a couple other questions we've gotten. One we were asked yesterday was why aren't we playing 3 fairy? I think the best reason is that we're not in black. We do not have a good way to tutor it out. We just got to rely on solely drawing the card. So, and we're not on Displacer Kitten. There are some Derevi lists that do run Displacer Kitten, and I think that is another way to build a deck. I think it's a very cool way to build a deck. And that list should run 3 fairy in it because of the combo with that. But if you're not on Displacer Kitten, I do not think it should be on 3 fairy.
I'll put an unscheduled hot take in here. I think that if you're on Displacer Kitten and going for those kind of lines, you might just be better off playing something like a Draxa.
I would also potentially agree with that too.
I do agree with that. However, talking about Displacer Kitten, I have thought about pulling Preston and Felidar and Ephemerate for Displacer Kitten, Snap, and Cloud Shift into my list. There's one other card that I would want to get in my list in doing that, which would be Noxious Revival, just because it's a free cast. But that gives me most of the Displacer Kitten lines that exist if I add 3 Fury also. So it's a few slots, and I haven't gotten around to it, but it is on my radar as an option. And I do have a list on the Derevi Discord that is a theory crafted list that uses that as one of its turbo win cons, if you want to take a look at that.
But I think that is it. Do we want to go more into like the intuition stuff, or do we want to talk about that later?
I think we talk about that when we cover combo stuff.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. We hit it pretty well earlier, but I just wanted to double check. Want to go into Mulligans?
Sure. We can start with you is the fastest deck.
Gotcha.
I've got you pulled up here. This is looking very mana heavy.
So
seeing four lands, Path, Fluster, and Eldritch Evolution.
So I actually have no acceleration in this, so I think I would actually ship this hand. I typically want to try to go off like turn 3, turn 4. So not having any acceleration and not having a creature to be able to sack to Eldritch Evolution to be able to get my payoffs is not where I want to be at.
This is fair. A thing we discussed yesterday, and you'll notice we're saying that we all discussed this yesterday because we actually recorded this entire podcast, but I messed up the audio, so we're doing it again. Is that usually in Mulls we want to have a plan of some kind that features some sort of acceleration, some sort of way to draw cards, and then if you can fit it, interaction. If you're mulling down lower, if you don't have that interaction, you may not have the room in your hand. It's probably the least important of the three, even though it is important. Getting yourself rolling advancing your game state is more important than stopping your opponents.
I will say on this hand, if one of those lands was a mana rock, that was a keepable hand.
I would potentially, yeah. I think I would also ship this too. Like, I don't want to be potting away my Grand Abolish. I don't want to slam Grand Abolisher turn 2 into Neoforming it into something on turn 3. I don't think that's especially because I can't cast it with this current hand either.
Right. It is a little rough to leave a Grand Abolisher in play. I do love a value Grand Abolisher, but we live in a clone world, and just giving your non-white deck opponent, if you give Rogsai a Grand Abolisher, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yeah. So this is my 6 that I would go to.
Yeah.
My 6. Okay.
One land. Rotate. Thrasios down the Archdruid's Fierce. Aven Interrupter.
This is also another mulligan too. I would not keep this hand either. So all I have is a crop rotation. This hand, I think I would actually keep. This is my 5, right?
5.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would ship Thrasios Manglehorn.
That's exactly what I would do. Yeah.
So
I assume you play out the Kinnan on turn 1, maybe turn 2 Esper.
So I would I would play it depends on my turn order, I think. So, that's even better. So I would play out Mana Confluence, and then I would Mox Diamond, pitch the other land. I can't.
It's the Savannah.
And then I would play Esper Sentinel. Yep. And then I would hold up the Enlightened Tutor. And then I would probably tutor for... It really just depends on how the table's looking, but I would tutor for potentially a Phyrexian Metamorph, a copy artifact, or what else would I tutor for here? Because I don't really want Birthing Pod. I could also see
even another mana rock so that you can cast Bird.
I could also seeing myself, depending on what I draw. I could also see, because I would wait until the turn cycle. If I draw any other mana source, I would tutor for a Ristic Study or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think Mox Amber's not a terrible fetch here either, because you play out the Kinnan, and then when you tap the Mox Amber, it then taps for double, and you can then probably cast Bird, and then you're making mana. You can probably start flipping through Kinnan, etc. You're drawing cards through Esper Sentinel. It seems like a good plan to me.
Yeah, definitely.
I think they both work.
Especially for a mold of 5.
Yeah, this was a pretty good mold of 5, and I typically find myself going down to 6 and 5 constantly with this list. So this was a very good 5. It's honestly, depending on what I draw with is what I tutor for, but I think either a clone is strong, a Ristic Study is strong, or maybe more mana. It's all depending on what's going on. So we want to do 1 or 2 more, and then we'll. Okay. I would ship this hand also. This hand, I have
1 mana source.
Yeah,
1 mana source
Yeah.
with nothing else is rough.
Where are those hands I had?
It's a beautiful hand. Oh, now
Never
now I
punished.
want it back.
Yeah,
Give it back.
yeah.
Give
Never
it back.
punished.
Yeah.
Because that copy artifact one of their lands and then play the risk, or one of their artifact rocks and play the risk. That's a keep, right?
No. So I have
No.
all I have is mana.
Yep, you have
All
mana
I
and
have is
protection.
mana and
but-
interaction. Yeah. So like what
That's
I would
fair.
yeah, so like if I were to keep this, I would probably like ship a land and then just like pitch the force to the Chrome Mox and then just have like Fierce up for when I cast Derevi turn 2, but that's not really an actual game plan, so I think I would ship this. So this is a 5.
Probably say you keep this. Gut reaction.
It's a little close.
It's
really
a little
close. I-
jank, but it
Yeah.
has a lot of juicy
This
pieces.
is
in it.
also
it-
5 though.
Yeah, it's also a 5. It has a plan where it has some ramp and it has Spellseeker, which is the best card in the deck. In like it assembles everything in my list.
Oh, yeah, it
So-
assembles everything in mine too. It's beautiful.
So
you pitch Dovin's Veto and Archdruids, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I would say here
Yeah.
as well.
yeah, I would
And
do that.
you play for the
So
turn.
I draw for turn. I would do that.
Cluster.
Mon-
That's not bad.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I would just I would play. No, I think I would. I think I want to draw another land. So I think I would actually play Trop.
Okay.
So I think I get what you're saying, but don't you want to play the Marsh Flats out so you don't risk getting oppoed?
I don't really. If they oppo, I think I'm in the belief that if they oppo my land or if they turn 1 oppo, then yeah, I got.
Well, they're not
But-
going to oppo your land. They're going to incidentally oppo that person's gamble or their imp seal,
Yeah.
and then you're going to be sitting with the Marsh Flats not being able to fetch.
Yeah, I think it's like more of like this is a 5, and I want to draw a land, and I think having the most amount of chances of drawing a land versus me getting hit by an oppo, like this hand is like it's a good hand, like it's a good keepable 5, but it's not like the greatest. So if I get oppoed, then yeah, I'm out.
And it could depend as much on the pod that you're in as well. If you're in a pod that doesn't have any black whatsoever, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, Oppo's not an option. Yeah. for
And
sure.
I think the chances of getting oppoed on turn 2 or by turn 2, if I'm like say like seat 1, seat 2, then I think that's extremely low because they have to like spend they have to have like potentially. I think the average mulligan has like 5-6. Being able to like put out 3 mana and have oppo agent is also very unlikely.
Absolutely. It's just something to be aware of, something to make note of. You want to fetch as early as you can.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, this hand definitely has a game plan. It has turn 2 Felwar Stone into Spellseeker. Spellseeker goes to get probably. Well, I would draw another card first, so go with that. Deafening Silence is not. I have to think on this because especially
Don't you play the Ristic out first, though?
yeah, probably actually.
And then hold the Spellseeker for what
Once you figure
goes-
out, draw a couple
Yeah.
more cards, maybe see where your Spellseeker line is going and develop from there.
And if they counter the Ristic at this point, then
Yeah.
you're in a position where you're just going to play Spellseeker and go for some kind of a win.
Yeah, definitely. But this is like a potential like turn 3, turn 4. So or this would be turn 4, turn 5 because I'd had to play the Felwar Stone, which you can also still hold up Flusterstorm and stuff like that.
You're holding up Flusterstorm every turn
Yeah,
in this until you, except for the turn you play Ristic,
definitely.
you're holding up Flusterstorm every turn.
Shall we move to the more mid-range mulls in my deck?
Can we do one more? We spent
Absolutely.
yeah. I think we could afford 3 each. So this hand is super close, but not there because I don't have a land.
Correct. And Mox Time,
This
unfortunately,
hand-
without a land is.
Yes, the hand would have been so gas. So
So we'll call this the second 7.
second 7. This hand is like super close actually, because it has somewhat of a plan where like I can Gilded Drake someone's advantage engine and then being able to grind from there because a lot of people are just sitting on the back of their advantage engines right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very pot. Like I know we say this a lot, but I think it's very pot dependent. If you think if you're playing like against a Dawnwaker or a Tivit
You
or
yield
something
like
like
a Timba,
that,
you know?
I love
or
this against a blue farm deck.
Yeah, like it's good. Like, but it's somewhat decent against Turbo too, because it has both 2 counters for Mindbreak Trap and for Mental Misstep too.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's very pod dependent. If you think you're going to be grinding a lot, I think I would be more tend to keep this hand. If it's not going to be grind dependent, if we're playing against mostly Turbo, I don't think I would keep this hand as much because I don't want to be table police. I do not like being table police.
Fair.
When I want to be the table police, I play a different deck.
So we'll do.
I certainly don't have the interaction to be table police.
Yeah, I have. I think I'm on like 13 pieces of interaction. So like I don't want to be it, but like it's not great.
When the option is losing the game, you do what you have to.
Let's see what a 5 would look like here. I would put back if I were to keep that as that was a 6, right?
That was a
Second
7.
seven,
That's your
actually.
second
Second
7.
7. So
Yeah, so you could keep all of these.
Oh yeah.
So this.
So
would be
yeah, this would be a 6. So man, my moles have not been good to me. Like
it's the opposite
not
of yesterday.
today.
Yeah, not
Yesterday
today.
they were
Yesterday
good.
was great.
But this is better because we get to talk more and learn more this way. So
yeah.
Correct.
So
It's better.
I would not keep this hand either. I cannot cast a single spell in this hand. This is a great 5.
It's
This is
a little bit of a rough 5, actually, to me.
So
No.
what I would do
Beautiful.
is so I would ship back the Grand Abolisher and the
Spirit Guide, right?
I think you keep the Spirit Guide so that way you can get out Birthing Pod as soon as possible, because this is banking on Exotic Orchard making.
Well, I have turn 2 Birthing Pod still with Mana Crypt, Exotic Orchard.
True. If you're on the
So
play here, this hurts though.
Yeah. So
Or do you keep the Spirit Guide so you can pod a 4 creature?
that's not a bad choice either.
You just go get Toski. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not on Toski in this list.
Oh, that's fair.
I can go get a 4-mana clone, or I can get I think my only other 4 is a meal. Let me.
Probably a little early for that, unless you like.
But I think
draw Cradle. No, you drew.
I think this is a gas hand. I could see either putting away the. So you put Grand Abolisher away, or I could see either the Elvish Spirit Guide or the Manamo. Definitely.
I guess my choice on that one is really based on what I expect colors my opponents to play. So what I'm expecting Exotic Orchard to be able to produce.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, definitely. For sure. Especially like if you don't. I think it's very also dependent on like what seat you're in, but you could still like jam turn 2 Birthing Pod, potentially cast Elvish Spirit Guide. I also run Sisei, so I could go grab Captain Sisei off of 4, which is pretty nutso.
Yeah, I mean, if you get lucky enough to put the Esper Sentinel in on turn 1 because you're in second or third seat and you get the white mana off of the Exotic Orchard, turn 2 Birthing Pod, you can pitch the Spirit Guide and sack the Esper Sentinel if you want to too. So I mean, you've got some play lines. Where you're going to go with that all depends. I mean, we all play the 2-mana clone, so there's potential there.
Definitely. So I think if I would keep this, I think those would be the 2 I'd ship back. Thinking about it after, I would keep the Elvish Spirit Guide to. It also depends on what I draw. Within the first 2 turns, first draw would have been Flusterstorm. Second draw would have been a land. So we would play.
It's Fluster into Brushland, but I think there was a shuffle in there somehow accidentally.
Yeah, no, you're good. There's no shuffle, I don't think, but so let's just say this Exotic Orchard does make white. White's pretty popular right now. So Exotic Orchard, Mana Crypt, Esper Sentinel.
Yep.
Because I want to get below Ristic Studies as much as possible. So I think I just jam out the Mana Crypt right there. And then probably draw like 2 cards, I think. This would be like first turn cycle. So off the Esper Sentinel. Oh yeah, this hand just got so much better.
Yep.
So next turn
insane.
I would Brushland.
Well, you actually drew a Marsh Flats as well, but up to you.
Yeah, I don't think it really matters. So I would jam Birthing Pod right here, probably holding up Flusterstorm.
Yep.
And then if I don't use the mana, I could pod Esper into it too, being a clone, being Bloom Tender, being
Bloom Tender is incredible with Kennen already in your hand.
Yes.
Yep. And then Pod being
you have 3 mana to cast a bird next turn. Yeah, that's
a game winner right there.
Yeah, definitely. And like I was saying, like you can this is that would be a potential, I think, potential turn
It'd be like
3 because
3.
we have a because you can go if you pod Esper into actual Bloom Tender, you play Kinnan, and then you just had to find a way to get 4. So so you have what?
Well,
You
you
need to
know, if
play
you pod the
yeah.
Bloom Tender, you don't even play Cannon. You play the land, play Bird.
Oh well,
and-
you also just flash duplicate too. That's even
Yeah.
better.
Flash
Yeah.
duplicate. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's insane.
I'd go grab Trop. I think having another green blue source is fine. So, you you jam Derevi right here,
Yep.
and then you float mana in response. Untap it. Use the green blue. Play Kinnan here.
This
Then
now makes
you
4. This makes 3.
yeah. So I would then cast. I think I'd hard cast Elvish Spirit Guide here using the 2 colorless.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then you can pod the Elvish
you have
Spirit
no
Guide.
green floating right now.
You'd
So,
have 1
Yeah,
green
it's-
floating,
Yeah, you don't.
No, because you had to use 1 green to cast the Cannon.
but you get an extra 1 from the second untap if you wait to tap it.
Oh, I guess then you have only 1 blue floating. You either have
Right.
1
I mean,
blue.
That's
Yeah, there you
that's
go.
still fine. So
But still, it's
you
But
still
yeah.
cast. You have 4 mana, so you use 1 colorless. You pod away Elvish Spirit Guide into a meal, and then
you have infinite mana.
you have infinite mana right there. And then you also have infinite Kinnan flips too.
Yep. And Flusterstorm backup the whole time.
Yeah, and what's crazy is
if
that
you
you
hadn't
got
spent
that from
it.
just what's crazy is that you still have this from just the 6 here that I had, the Birthing Pod Mana Crypt, Birthing Pod
5.
Mana Crypt. No, it's a 6, I thought, right? It was a
That
6.
was 5.
Oh
There's
yeah, it's
5
even
for hand.
better. So this is this is turn 3 with a
Yep.
5. So, but just showing like that as long as you have a game plan of having some sort of acceleration and having something to do with that acceleration, you can get there. But we want to move on to someone else's.
Yeah, I think going from fast to slow, I'll go next. Looking at this hand, I would not keep this. It is a 1 land with Mox Diamond. It does have a lot of things in it, and it is very keepable if you draw a second land off the top, but it's a little risky to rely on that. Yeah, I would have drawn E-Tutor. So
That's a land, right?
Not quite. I would have shipped this back to get a second 7. Just because you don't even go down the card for the first mull. This hand, I'm also not a big fan of. I have 1 land source that is all my colors, but I don't have any 1 mana spells. My 2 mana spells are Cannon and Gilded Drake, but I can't guarantee that I cast them. I did in fact draw the land, but it's slow. It doesn't feel like I'm doing anything.
Yeah, it's a bit rough.
Another 1 lander. Not really. You generally want to have a play on turn 1. 1 land and a Chrome Mox. Notably, I'm on. We're actually now on all different land counts. Clay went up a land. You are on 26. Clay's on 27. I'm on 28. So, I think
this is
mathematically
5,
they're all about the same.
Yeah, that was a 5, right? That you just shipped.
This is 5.
This is 5.
Okay.
I would probably keep this because it has 2 mana. You can crop rotate eventually into Gaia's Cradle. Ideally, the plan here is to get Trouble in Pairs out to rebuild. You don't want to go too low in your mulls because you only have so many things. We are not an insane card quality deck like Blue Farm. We are a synergistic deck. And while
So
we're
my
not
question,
exactly Tyam, our card quality isn't as good.
So it's obvious you pitch Stasis here. My question to you is, do you pitch Silence or Veil as your second card you pitch?
I think you pitch Stasis. I would probably pitch the Silence because you use Veil Summer under the Chrome Mox, so you have all your colors. Because you don't have the green otherwise.
I think
that was kind of my thought, but I was also just
I don't
curious,
want to
where
pitch
you
Silence
felt
and
on
Veil
that.
Summer, but you have to play with the cards you're dealt. So I would love to keep
because
those cards in my
Silence can
hand.
stop a win.
Yes.
In this case, and that's one of your risks when you're going down.
I would have drawn a bop, so yeah, we put
this
Stasis bottom. We do this, and now you have bop, and then next turn you have bird into crop rotation, and that gets you your. You probably don't want to crop rotate this cradle away or this Tumbler away. Mana Confluence. Okay, you're good.
You
Turns
slam
out you
Trouble
never
in
get
Pairs
punished.
and try to. Yeah.
But yeah, going down to 5, you're very much relying on Trouble in Pairs here. Luckily, Trouble in Pairs is great, but
I need to get a Trouble in Pairs with an altar for a different art.
Yeah.
We do hate the plagiarism. That's correct. This side, if this was a fresh 7, I'd probably keep this. This has a lot of things that I like. It's got Pod. It's got an opening with Fairy. This is a terrible card, as I've said, but you want to get it early, and you either want to have it just sit here and do nothing, or you want to have it in your graveyard. And
so I've been on Fairy. I've been on Fairy, and I actually love it as a turn 1 play, because even if I don't have turn 2 play, I can use its untap ability to remove one of those stun counters, and then by the time Bird comes in, I've got a 3/3 flying evasive beater with Ward 2, and it's perfectly fine to just be sitting there and play beating people up for untaps.
And people will forget this has Ward 2. I've won a tournament because a blue farm player paid 19 or 17 life into a Fire Covenant and then targeted the Sleep Curse Fairy, but didn't have the ward cost, so the entire spell was countered.
My last tournament win was on the back of a Sleep Curse Fairy ASC combo. I was still playing it at the time, and I actually do love the Sleep Curse Fairy. So it's an incredibly exciting turn 1 play. This hand isn't very fast, but it does let you start putting pressure somewhat early in the game, and it does have the Birthing Pod and the Ephemeral Elder already in play in your hand, and a meal for that matter. Although you don't really need a meal in your hand, so it's got a decent window to try to find a win. It's just not.
There's no protection
all
here,
there.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like
you're kind of being a leech at the table, but you never know.
Bant Parasitism. Let's go. Yeah, I would keep this. I'll do one more.
I think that's called a listen.
It might be. I'm not a Baldur's Gate player. I don't know the tadpoles.
Oof.
I would keep this. You've got crop rotation to find your lands. You've got lands to cast your spells. Turn 1 play, turn 2 play, turn 3 play with Bird if you just ramp out. It's not fast, but I think with the flexibility of Gilded Drake, I think it can be something fun and feasible because, again, you take someone's Timna or other value engine with Gilded Drake, and you're the one drawing cards now. And that's what you got. You have a combo piece out, you've got your commander, you've got cards drawn.
As a first 7, I think I ship this one myself.
Okay.
Just because, yeah, Gilded Drake is powerful. Crop rotation is awesome, but this has the all mana, no engine problem. And the question becomes, is that going to be enough when you're just drawing into it as one of our biggest weaknesses? So if I'm playing against a couple blue farm decks, I might consider keeping this because Gilded Draking their Crom or something is going to be really good. But if I'm not, I probably ship this.
Yeah. As we said, it's very card dependent. But now we can go to you, Clay. Let's look at some of your moles. Just to give you some different flavors of moles here. This one has a Besagio as its only land source, but you do have a Worldly Tutor.
That's a pitch.
I agree.
Worldly Tutor doesn't get me anything fast. It gets me a mana dork. It doesn't get me anywhere quick.
Also playing Besagio.
Yeah. And that's cool and all, but I don't feel like a Charismatic Conqueror or a Fairy Mastermind on turn 3 is going to be turn 2 or turn 3 is going to be any good. Well, it's going to be turn 3 because the Worldly Tutor into the draw is the dork doesn't come down till turn 2. So Delny's awesome. The cards that are in the hand,
you've got
the
these
cards that are in the hand are awesome.
Just not together.
You have to draw. You literally have to draw a land turn 1 for that hand to be playable.
You drew a fish you can't cast.
Nope.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mox Amber, Crop Rotation, 2 lands. This would be the second. That's a keepable hand.
Okay.
That's second 7. That's a keepable hand. It looks weird. It feels awkward, but it's Bountiful Promenade. And then you kind of are just looking at what's going on, but you have an inevitability machine with your One Ring. You have the play with the Gilded Drake to take stuff from other players. You have crop rotation, so if you get in a pinch, you can fix your colors with crop rotation.
So are
and
you
You're one blue source off being able to cast Derevi and carry the game.
And
From there.
Gildredrig. But it's possible that you crop rotate for a blue source, You
Yeah.
have that option.
If you have to, you have to. Yep. I wouldn't want to go any lower. The Wargate. What's the second turn?
Misty.
Yeah, there you go. You're good. Turn 2 draw was your blue source you needed. You never had to pull the trigger on the crop rotation. Didn't have to gamble that way, and you're off to the races with that hand.
Yep. One Ring's a good card.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a little slower, but it's a good hand.
Oh, this I think you keep for sure.
Yeah, that is definitely a keep 7.
Definitely.
The turn 1 Delighted Halfling, doesn't quite get to the turn 2 Elish Norn, but it does do
Well,
some
hold on.
fun
If you draw
things.
land,
Yeah, if you draw, still Blind Obedience on turn 2. It's still pretty
you could Blind
good.
Obedience on turn 1 if you wanted to. If this was on the
Oh,
play,
yeah.
you could do that because you have Mana Crypt.
I would, yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's fire.
Yeah, there's no question on that hand. That's a keeping hand right there. So.
No lands.
That's a mull.
The Crow Mox.
That's a
You
mull.
mull that.
The second 7.
Ancient
That's
Tomb,
a keep.
Bop. This might be decent. You got an early
That's a
study.
keep.
You
Yeah.
got a ring. You got a Savine.
Oh, yeah,
Ephemerate,
I
you
would-
got lots of combo here.
So this is Misty Rainforest Bop on turn 1. The Misty is gonna go fetch it's gotta be that's terrible. It's gotta be the Trop Island, unfortunately, which is not where you want to be with this, because the Ristic Study is what you really want to play. You have to didn't draw the card for the turn, unfortunately.
Oh.
It's okay.
Look at that. We shuffled before or after we drew.
Yeah, so if then you play Birds turn 1, you set up to play, then it just gets better and better.
Yep.
No, Ancient Tomb.
Yeah, I would Ancient Tomb into Ristic Study, hold up Bird.
Yep, Ancient Study, Ristic Study, hold. Yep, that's perfect play.
You can Worldly Tutor on instep.
Yeah.
You can Worldly Tutor on instep.
You can have any kind of counter magic or removal or something you can draw off Ristic. Yeah, this hand is very, very solid.
Yeah. And if they decide to stop you from getting the Ristic, you follow it up on the next turn with the One Ring as your card draw engine. They probably don't have an answer to both. And it gets even better than that, because then you Savines the Ristic back into play. And you get both.
Ristic One Ring, card draw good. Are you feeling one more? Or?
Sure.
All right.
Well,
two lands.
Well, actually, I hate having Preston in hand. I don't really ever want to have him in hand. But this hand is keepable if you know where you're at and not having to worry about answers for a meta, because the turn 2 Fairy Mastermind is a very good card advantage engine. You have 2 tutors to go get whatever you may end up needing, and then you already have a silence effect in your hand for when you're ready to go for a win. This is a keepable hand. It feels slow, but it really is just about who you're playing against. Because if you're worried about them also having the Bowmaster or the opposition agent, then this is not a good hand. If you're not worried about one of those two things, and you're not worried about someone beating you to the punch with a turbo deck, this is a good hand.
I think I would still keep this hand regardless, because being able to turn 1 Worldly Tutor, whatever you want to Worldly Tutor for, being a clone effect, a Bloom Tender, or anything you want, I think that's perfectly fine, because they play Bowmasters, so okay, I'm gonna go grab my Flesh Duplicate and clone your Bowmasters. I think this hand's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. I would keep this hand. So one thing that I will do with a lot of decks that may not quite be agree is if I have 2 castable tutors, I probably am looking to keep the hand. In this particular case, I have protection, 2 castable tutors, and an engine. So the only thing I'm actually concerned about with this hand is getting just a little bit more mana, and the fact that I'm playing on curve in cEDH, which isn't really where we want to be. So I have to look at my table for whether or not that's a good or bad thing.
Right.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
I know we talked. I know there was some conversation about mulligans before we started this whole thing, and there was a hand that I said I'd keep that nobody else would, and that's the reason why. It was a Mindbreak Trap and 2 tutors that were castable, and that's 2 tutors in our deck is game winning.
Yeah, definitely.
Whether
For the
that
record,
2
your
tutors
top card
is
was a Ranger Captain, which is potentially a third
another
tier.
silence effect and a tutor.
Yes.
So.
We want to talk about like our pod lines, toolbox stuff.
Yeah.
What do we tutor for here?
So we are a birthing pod deck. There is a birthing pod win line that none of us are on. I think should be shouted out. It is you pod Derevi into Felidar Guardian, and you pod Felidar Guardian into Karmic Guide, I believe.
You can do it with my deck, as long as you start one lower for Delny.
Yes, Delny makes things
I do
a
not
lot
have
easier.
the karmic. I do not have the karmic guideline. Mine does not go up high enough for karmic guide, but you can do it with my list with Delny.
You can also do it with my list too. If you start with 2-drop, you can 2-drop into Spellseeker. Spellseeker goes grab crop rotation. Then you hit someone with Derevi, you untap pod, then you pod Spellseeker away or other 3-drop to go get a meal.
Yep. And the crop rotation gets your cradle. So if you have enough creatures, that's your infinite mana.
Yeah. The only bad part about that line is that if you have no other outlet, your only outlet is the tap down outlet.
Yeah. And we can cover that when we cover
the tap down outlet. No,
yeah,
because
the Derevi dance, the soft lock.
No, you once you have infinite mana, you untap the pod again, and then you pod Derevi.
Oh yeah. I guess I could do that. I don't have a good 4 I can in my list. I don't have a good 4 I can outlet on besides Metamorph being a clone. I don't have
enough creatures to make infinite mana. It's likely you have a lower CMC creature in play.
Yeah. I was just saying that is I do have a pod line to go with that, but that's my go-to pod line is 2-drop into Spellseeker, go grab crop rot, then you pod your Spellseeker into a meal.
Yeah, which
sorry.
both of our lists can do because we both play those cards in the list.
I'm the only one not on Spellseeker, but I also have less stack interaction. I'm trying to not cast as many spells.
Yeah,
but that's a personal preference. But tutoring.
The notable thing about pod is it wins games for us. But one really important thing is your 4 CMC creatures. We're not a traditional pod deck in terms of us wanting to create a pod chain that pods us into victory. So we turn our 1-drop into a 2-drop into a 3-drop into a 4-drop into a ... we win. We actually play a lot of lines where we pod Derevi into a value piece and then replay Derevi.
Right. The fact that we can bypass the commander tax every single time using our ability makes it so that way we have a certain degree of inevitability. You basically cannot get rid of Derevi unless you have a control effect that removes Derevi off of our board. If Derevi gets exiled, destroyed, whatever, it's just we're 4 mana away. And if that's something like a Chromatic Orrery, that makes 5 mana. Oh no, we net 1 mana, but other times you're getting at least 1 mana back, possibly more if you have Cradle out or another permanent that taps for more than 1 mana. But it's very hard to get rid of Derevi.
Yes, it can be very difficult.
I've used that fact as a politics to prevent people from removing Derevi as well. Notably, sometimes you want a politic to get Derevi in the command zone because you can abuse that ETB. It is a not combat phase untap. And sometimes it's worth it. But pod in general, you can pod things. This is where it helps to know your list like the back of your hand because you can go from Esper Sentinel into Grand Abolisher or Gilded Drake. You can, you take any chunk of CMC, add 1, suddenly your Charismatic Conqueror is your Delny. And then you use your Charismatic Conqueror vampire tokens to fuel your Delny, doubling your Derevi triggers, and go crazy from there. Delny is an absolute powerhouse in our deck. allows us to get triggers in where we normally wouldn't have due to the evasion. People sleep on this evasion and they go, oh, the doubling is the real powerhouse. No, if you don't have any triggers to double, then there's nothing. This does nothing. But this allows our creatures to slip underneath Tivits, Kroms, Talions, Atraxes, any large commander that you see, Khan, Sphinx, anything with power 3 or greater, it turns out. You can't block a Tymna with this, or you can't slip under a Tymna, but people usually don't like to block with Tymna. Delny really just goes crazy in our deck. Doubling an ETB off Derevi, when we talk about a meal and going infinite with that, that allows you to go infinite with anything that makes 2 mana or more because you untap it twice. Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, all sorts of things. But we can talk about that when we do combos. As far as specific pod things, obviously remember that it is sorcery only. You can't untap the pod and then activate it with that untapped trigger on the stack still, like you can do with some things, like the Bloom Tender shenanigans. But generally, using Derevi's ability to untap the pod once or twice wins you the game. You turn Derevi into a meal, you get Derevi back, you find something that makes mana, you go from there. It helps you find your outlets. If you have a 2, you can pot it into Ranger Captain to get a. For me, it's Ballista. You could get White Plume. All sorts of options. The 4 drops are very valuable, like Clay mentioned. So many lines that you can do. Very flexible win con.
And also being able to just grab your toolbox options. Like a lot of us, it's very meta dependent based off of what you keep or like what kind of toolbox options you have. I have Manglehorn as a go-to. I have Dauntless Dismantler. I do have some advantage engines with I have Kinnan. Kinnan's a good one. It works also at the outlet. Yeah, Thrasios is something I can grab. Captain Sisay. Just being able to toolbox your way also is a very strong part of the deck too.
I mean, we showed that in a mulligan to 5, where
Yeah.
Birthing Pod just won the game, potentially. Yeah. So it can't be misstated that that Birthing Pod is why we play Neoform and Eldritch Evolution too.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely. I was just stressing like being able to know your meta is a very important part, but being able to like tune your toolbox and being able to use your Birthing Pod to find your toolbox targets is very important.
We talk about some of the things that we want to avoid when we enter a pod, the weaknesses of Bird.
Yeah, so the weaknesses that we tend to, at least that probably Jake Collins and I more of tend to see is Curse Totem. Curse Totem is very difficult for my deck specifically because my really only avenue to win is the Emil line. I do have the Spellseeker line, but it's a little bit more difficult to achieve, and Curse Totem shuts that down. It shuts down all my activated abilities, which is what most of the deck is, so that can be pretty rough.
It's why I have an excess of destroy target artifact or enchantment effects, because if I see this in play, I can function, but not very well. And I just would prefer if it's not there.
So with Curse Totem, I just shift my focus to Aerie Clone, or stasis locking the table until I can answer the Curse Totem.
Yes, and that's definitely fair. And I don't know if you had mentioned it in this video or not, but you said your meta is more activated ability heavy, so more people are also willing to answer the Curse Totem than some other metas. Like my meta particularly does not care about Curse Totem, besides like the potential like Teamer Sabertooth and stuff like that, but people still will play it. So it's more like on like me to be able to answer the Curse Totem.
I think I have the same number of artifact removals as you do.
Yeah.
But my general feeling about Curse Totem is just it really is just to go for one of my other lines and let the board develop. One of the things about a stacks piece like that is that players will see it and then they will go, oh, he's got a Bloom Tender and a Meal in play. I don't care, there's a Curse Totem in play. So you can set up a win that exists but is stopped by the Cursed Totem, and then just wait.
Curse Totem and go for there.
Yeah,
When it's time
and
for
you
your
just
window.
wait.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So you can play your pieces out onto the board, and you can diplomacy that they're not as threatening because, well, they're not. The Cursed Totem stops, but you don't have to reveal the fact that you have that Otawara sitting in your hand, or that Boseiju sitting in your hand. So really, when I see a stacks piece like Cursed Totem that doesn't actually completely stop me, because I do play Clone and Aerie as an outlet that actually doesn't care about Cursed Totem at all, and it's just why run from it? Like, yeah, I can remove it, but do I need to?
I do believe the accurate way to deal with stacks pieces is to ignore them until you can't. Play through them, let other players be hindered by it, and then when it's time for you to have your window, you remove the stacks piece that is affecting you the most and preventing you. But you basically want to remove as little stacks pieces as possible because they hurt your opponents too. So if you can make it so you can get through it, then do that and allow your opponents to still be hampered by the in-play stacks effects and go for your win. I do want to clarify that shout out to Grafdigger's Cage and Weathered Runestone for also being mildly annoying. I would say less annoying than Curse Totem, but as green is putting things directly into the battlefield from from libraries and sometimes graveyards with Finale, Devastation, and Invasion of Ikoria, this can hamper us.
Grafdigger's Cage is annoying.
Yes.
And
same thing with humility. We do hate humility quite a bit.
Now, humility you have to remove. You can't play through the humility. None of our combos work through humility.
We're a creature combo deck. This kills the creature part. Yeah.
Yeah, none of our combos work through humility. Like, I can't even stasis lock through humility. Like, you play humility, and I'm probably just gonna remove it because nobody plays humility unless they are they're planning to play around it.
Yep.
You know, you've got two decks to play it, which are Shorkai and then Ashai Tavesh.
Yeah.
Nobody else plays humility, and those two decks both love it. So just get rid of it. Just figure out who has the answer and get rid of it.
And
go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, and if these are like relevant to your meta, just try to shift your deck to try to be able to answer these a little bit more often. Like if you're seeing like for some reason there's a stacks deck that's running humility, probably run more answers to play against humility or something like that. Just try to shift your deck to try to fight your meta.
If I saw more humility, I would probably play Aura Shards as a card because it is a perfect answer to most of the stacks pieces that affect us. We still want to cast our creature out through humility, but it'll still trigger the Aura Shards. It's a great option there. But we all play Otawara, we all play Boseiju, we all play Archdruid's Charm, we all play Cyclonic Rift. I mean, that's 4 answers right there that answer all of the stacks pieces that affect us. I know Force of Vigor has been talked about. I don't think any of us are on it. And then I know that Nature's Claim has been talked about, and I know none of us are on it, but have been in the past.
I would be more willing to run Force of Vigor than I would be Nature's Claim. But I do know that we all said that basically Boseiju replaced Nature's Claim for people in the meta just because it's so flexible and you can play it as a land.
Yeah. So if you're running into these problems, Grafdigger's Cage, Cursed Totem, Humility, these are all good answers for you. The other cards that we really worry about are Opposition Agent, because we tutor a lot, Orcish Bowmaster, because, well, he likes to pick apart our boards. I think I mentioned Mayhem Devil just because it's a combo piece that I see frequently that is similar to Orcish Bowmaster. And then what is there? I know there's another creature that I hate seeing. I know Torpor Orb, but that's not a creature. There's one more creature that I hate seeing. And generally speaking, the nice thing about all these is they're all answered with creature removal. And all of our decks, again, play a handful of creature removal. Again, if you see more of these, up your creature removal.
Yep. Solitude is a great option for that. Exactly.
I think the other like biggest thing is when you lose your Derevi. Also, like getting your Derevi Gilded Drake is pretty rough.
And
Just
board wipes.
yeah, and board wipes, but losing Derevi, that's why we also put an emphasis on clone effects. Clone effects can save you from that happening as well. Because yeah, it sucks your Derevi gets taken, but you still run your own Gilded Drake, so you can Gilded Drake your own Derevi back, and you run clone effects to clone your Derevi also.
Yep. Shall we describe some of our combos?
Yeah, I think we go over the meat and potatoes of this, the infinite combos, and the outlets.
Okay.
I think they're listed in my primer.
Yeah, so I think I think there's probably like 2.5 categories. Like there's the infinite mana ones, and then there's the Preston Feldar combo.
Correct.
So,
There are many ways to generate infinite mana. Most notably, Emil, Derevi, Gaia's Cradle. As we've mentioned, you just make 4 mana, you spend 3, you blink Derevi, you make an additional 4 plus mana, and then you can filter your green mana into white or blue via just untapping a different land. Split second on like Trickbind makes you sad here, and Emil is notably not protected by much, but is a thing that if you have the mana to keep it going, you can go on top of people.
Emil is the weak point in the combo. It's where they're going to where they're most likely to target to actually stop you. Occasionally, you might see a Boseiju on your Gaia's Cradle, but the primary target for them is Emil. And ideally, you have 3 extra mana to go on top of the removal for Emil. If you don't, hopefully you have a protection spell. Keep Emil alive, and even if you fail, then we get to do the Derevi dance with Emil and Derevi until you find an answer. The key part of this combo is that it is Gaia's Cradle is a 4 mana source. It doesn't it can be whatever. It doesn't have to be Gaia's Cradle. We use Gaia's Cradle because that's the common one, that's the known one. It's probably the easiest of them. But with things like Delny and Kennen, our value doublers, basically, it allows us to use other sources to create 4 mana. So with Delny, my Wild Growth is enough, potentially, to do this.
Cannon plus Mana Vault works.
Yeah.
Also, Chromatic
Kennen
Ori.
Bloom Tender, Kennen Favor of.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chromatic
if you
Ori
have
is
a Mox
great.
Diamond and Delny and Kinnan, that will not work. You need 4. That only makes 3.
That makes 4.
Oh no, sorry, the Delny gives you double untap.
Yeah,
so that does work.
Yeah.
So yeah, Mox Diamond would then work. You'd be making 6 mana. It's a little silly.
Yeah, and so there's plenty of ways that our value doublers apply here. Preston can be used as a value doubler if you're running him. By making a clone of Derevi when Derevi enters off of the Emil. You let in this case, you let the illusion die and keep the original Derevi. In some of the other Preston lines, you would let the original Derevi die because you want it back in the command zone, but not in the case of valuing for your Emil combo.
Correct. Because you wanted in play to continue to blink.
Yep. That's our basic combo. We all go for it. It is also worth noting that an older version of this combo is Eldrazi Displacer in place of Emil. It's a little bit clunkier because it requires colorless mana specifically, but it can be used, and you might consider using it with an Intuition Savine's package because it's 3 CMC. I would always play Emil first because 4 CMC is actually better for us than 3 CMC because of the ability to pod Derevi into it and then replay Derevi. So.
I will note,
but there is some redundancy on this combo.
With Displacer, particularly, you do need that colorless source. If you have a fixing effect, such as Agatha's Soul Cauldron or Chromatic Orrery, those say you can use mana as though it was any color. That does not include colorless. You cannot use those to fix your mana for this. Chromatic Orrery itself does produce colorless, so that kind of gets around that fact. But you do need specifically the colorless mana. Previously, Derevi would run Scorched Ruins quite a bit because it's a land that makes 4 colorless mana. So this as well just goes straight infinite with Emil.
I do
But
have
you
to
do have
make a
to
point.
sacrifice
I
2
budget
untapped
friendly.
lands, and it makes colorless mana, and it's just kind of a relic of the past, I would say.
If you're in any non-proxy area and you still want to play Derevi, this can be your Gaia's Cradle. Just make sure you have an extra land.
Yep.
It's not as good, but it's still playable as a budget option.
Yeah.
I don't really want to advocate for budget, but I know that not all of us are quite as lucky as the ability to have infinite proxies allowed in our tournaments and in our areas.
Absolutely.
So it is definitely something to make a note of that Scorched Ruins and Eldrazi Displacer do still exist. They're both still good, and they're both still especially good in budget scenarios.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually thinking about actually slotting Displacer back in because I'm on more colorless sources now. That is an option to be able to have, just being able to have a second copy of Emil is pretty nice. And then, so the other primary combo that we have access to is the Preston Feldar combo. If you do not know what this combo is, it's a little bit janky. If you have Preston the Vanisher on the battlefield, and you have Feldar Guardian enter the battlefield not being cast from the hand, you can make infinite 0/1s. So Feldar will enter, Preston will trigger, and Feldar will trigger. Preston will let you make a 0/1 illusion of Feldar Guardian. You make the original one target a land or whatever you want to flicker, and then the token copy will target the original, and then you make infinite 0/1s this way with infinite mana and infinite flicker, infinite ETBs.
And then, if nothing else, infinite mana allows you to put Derevi into play to create infinite untaps or taps, which is specifically different than the infinite mana created by the land. I like this combo and I play this combo because it doesn't need Derevi, but Derevi is a thing, and it creates a soft block where you exile all their non-land permanents with Preston, and hopefully you have a way to win, but if you do get stopped, you do have that backup of all their non-land permanents are gone. This is sitting in play, and all you need is a way to win after that. So
Notably, because this combo is reliant on the Felidar ETB and the copying of with Preston, if you choose to let the cycle end because you would like to take, say a sorcery speed action, you need a way to restart the combo if you want to get to that effect again. So, like Emil, you can just pay 3 mana and start it back up, but Preston has to have the creature enter the play from battlefield. So, like Clay, I know you've mentioned value like Ephemerate or something like that to get that going again. But if you do get stopped in the middle, it can be hard to start back up, and that's why some of us aren't on this combo, even though it can do very well. And the cards are just decent in our deck overall. Like Preston, you mentioned having Preston in your hand is kind of dead, and I agree with that. But having Preston in play, like it's kind of like a mini Delny, not nearly as good, but it provides value. Same with Felidar Guardian.
Preston can replace Delny in a lot of the Emil combos. Felidar has combo chains off of Birthing Pod that help. I play the 2 of them because I also play Elish Norn, as I mentioned earlier, for the possibility to just outright win off of that. Also, one of my primary win cons is White Plume Adventurer, and if White Plume Adventurer is in play, again, this combo doesn't need Derevi. If they steal my Derevi and I get to my White Plume or one of my other outlets, I can flicker this in combo and win. So if I have Kennen in play and I put this into play, sometimes it's Preston and Kennen are in play and I flip Felidar and boom, I win. Because I create infinite mana, and while Felidar flickers are still on the stack, I activate Kennen until I get White Plume, then I start flickering the White Plume. Boom, I win. I don't need Derevi. That's the main reason I play it. But it also, the cards are good in other ways. Preston is good with Birthing Pod. He's good with all of our cheat into play tutors. Felidar is good with Birthing Pod. The worst is Felidar in hand, and you cast Felidar and you flicker something and you go get an ETB value, and it just kind of sucks. But even then, I've still done it to try to get somewhere in the game. So
Our next
gotcha.
combo is I actually really love this name. I've not seen it called this before. Clone-matic
my name.
Orrery. Big fan. There's a bit of text here, but I can sum it up pretty quickly for you. Basically, you have Chromatic Orrery in play, and then you have Derevi either in the command zone or in play. You will need it in play to copy with a clone. Notably, not a clone that makes your target non-legendary, like Auton Soldier or Sakashima the Imposter, or of 1,000 Faces, etc., etc. It has to remain legendary, because then you copy Derevi. Chances are you untap the Chromatic Orrery to make mana, and then you use the legend rule to your advantage. So you have 2 Derevis, and you put the original back in the command zone, and you just keep activating the ability, netting up mana each time, because you'll spend 4, put Derevi on the field. It'll see the other Derevi. You'll have to pick one. You sacrifice the original, goes back to the command zone, and you still get the ETB is the notable thing. So you untap the Chromatic Orrery, and that allows you to generate infinite mana, generate infinite untaps on the Chromatic Orrery, draw your deck, go from there. I believe we've talked about Spellseeker quite a bit, actually. If you would like more in-depth details, again, Birb Wiz Clay Q's primer is a good resource. I know that I need to update my primer. It's from a time that my deck was a little more stacksy. It has different combos now. But
yeah,
I can also cover some Agatha's Soul Cauldron combos.
Yeah.
Agatha's Soul Cauldron is a little more flexible in its win line. It does have deterministic wins, but also you don't have to get there the same way each time. Because you can put any of your activated abilities from a creature onto any other creature. So that's, a Walking Ballista Ping. That's a Kinnan Flip. Untapping this permanent is how this card actually reads. You put a Sleep Curse Fairy activation on a Favor Welder, boom, you have infinite mana of all colors, because Soul Cauldron has the funny color fixing that the blue doesn't actually matter. You're just spending 2 mana and getting 3. So you net 1 mana each time of the color of your choice, and you can go from there. You can put the Ballista ability on it, infinite mana with Ballista, obviously a kill. Infinite Kinnan Flips hits Emil and White Plume, which then allows you to win the game with Blinking White Plume. And I believe those are my only infinite mana outlets, but you can then, say your Ballista gets removed because you have a Heliod on board. You can then put the Ballista ability on something else, give it lifelink, and then do the same thing again. You can take Ranger Captain ability and multiply your silences, remove things with Haywire Might. Your options are very flexible. If your Birds is in the graveyard, you need just 1 more mana. Screw it, we ball. Just put a bird, tap a match for a mana on your... Take your Birds of Paradise, make your Derevi of Paradise,
Yeah, I've had my Sisay get removed when I was on Soul Cauldron, and you can pitch your Soul Cauldron to or Sisay to Soul Cauldron, and then all of your dudes with counters are Sisay, which is insane.
Correct. You usually only need like 1 or 2 activations of Sisay to win. And this is also notably a way to get around Summoning Sickness, because if your creature's already been in play, you can just find a way to get Captain Sisay in the graveyard and then put the ability on it and then tap immediately to get that search. If you have
Even without
cards in your hand, you can discard the hand size. Go ahead, Clay.
No, you're good. Even without the Agatha Soul Cauldron combo line, specifically around Sleep Curse Fairy and whatnot, Agatha Soul Cauldron is incredible value for being able to copy your Bloom Tender after it gets removed, make your Derevi Bloom Tender, as was already mentioned, the Sisay, the Emil, anything that they throw into your graveyard for whatever reason you can get back. Don't forget, you can also get back things in other people's graveyards. A lot of decks out there are running things like Magda as utility plays. I've seen Malcolm Kedis decks that run Magda simply so that they can sack all those treasures to do something else while they're waiting on Glinthorn. Well, some of our most powerful things in our deck are artifacts.
Yep.
So don't sleep on the card. It is absolutely playable, even without super heavy combo integration. I'm looking at playing it like it is. So, but with the combo integration, you do the same thing this deck always does, and you stumble head first into infinite mana. That is what we love to do.
Yes. You can also note that it exiles cards. It's not just creature cards. You can exile any card. So say it's someone's going to reanimate a dockside. You can exile that dockside before it gets reanimated. I have lost a game because I forgot I could do that. Someone was reanimating a Thassa's, and I could have eaten it, and I didn't. It was pointed out to me immediately after, and I wanted to flip the table. Your cards have so many different ways to use it that being aware of all the capabilities and the options that you have is just really inherent to the deck. I believe that's most of our combos. Do we want to cover just some things to play in different metas?
I just want to touch on the snap combo again. That's the other combo that I'm on. Clay is also thinking about running it. It's the snap, Eternal Witness, and Guy's Cradle, like I mentioned before. That does make infinite mana, and then once you have that, you wit and 4 other creatures. That is a pretty tall ask sometimes, especially in the Bowmasters meta, but it does happen. You can dump that mana into. I run Thrasios on my list. You can use Blind Obedience is how I get around One Ring protection, and there's a lot of different ways you can use infinite mana. That's just something I wanted to mention real quick.
Yep. We can also throw out the Fairy Mastermind combo. If you have infinite mana, you can draw your entire deck and draw everyone else out with, if you have Angel's Grace. Notably, this is giving your opponent's cards, so be careful. I see that Envy is also on Thrasios as an infinite mana outlet here. That is Soul Cauldronable as well. It is an activated ability. Cauldron good. But infinite mana outlet. Are there other infinite mana outlets that I'm missing for you, Envy?
Kennen.
Yes.
Yep, Kennen, Thrasios. We'll consider Emil an outlet just because that's how you spend your mana, even though it doesn't actually end the game for you. That's something to note. You can have infinite mana, and you're not guaranteed a win because our commander is not the outlet. You know, it enables the outlet.
I will say, because I get asked this actually quite a bit. The reason why I run Thrasios is because I can also fetch it off Sisse. So it is my Sisse grabs the Guy's Cradle, the Emil, and the Thrasios for me to win.
It also grabs Kutzil to open your window, to silence your opponents, to say, very good. If I look and just see how many legendary permanents you have.
Honestly, I will say this. I should
16.
be playing Sisse. I should be playing Sisse, and I'm not. I'm not really sure why I'm not, but Sisse should probably be in the deck. I have no legitimate reason to not be playing it, other than I'm just not.
I'll give you a non-foil for free if you let me sign it.
It's not about price.
Yeah.
I know.
No, not about price. Sorry.
But I'm just saying, I got one for you if you need one.
You win the game at Cowtown, we'll talk.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, just also Sisse, because I think Sisse is pretty important to the list. It can also go grab your Boseiju Otawara too, and your Chromatic Orrery, because it's just
Chromatic Orrery and
the One Ring and
One Ring and Agatha Soul Cauldron and it's
Minamo, if you need it's any legendary
permanent, and because
we have a lot.
Because it's based on tapping and untapping, it gets even more bonkers with Derevi. I will say this: it is definitely like a flaw in my deck list, and I need to put it out there that you should be playing Captain Sisse, unless you have a very intentional reason for not. And I mean, I guess my reason is I haven't figured out what to remove for it, but that's not really a good enough reason to not play this card.
Definitely. I think that's all the outlets though I run, so go over real quick everyone else's outlets real quick.
Clay.
I don't think I have any different ones. I think I have the exact same ones.
Yeah.
I mean Finale, but he's playing
Mastermind,
Finale also.
Kennen.
We're all playing Finale.
We're all in Finale. Yep. You can give your creatures arbitrarily large amounts of power and smack.
Yeah, Mastermind, Kennen, and Finale are mine.
You're also on White Plume too. White Plume is your outlet.
Yep.
White Plume is the outlet with Emil. Yeah.
It's how you end the game without passing the turn or trying to go to combat. You can do this in your second main, and you can still win the game because the initiative has a room called Trap that target opponent loses 5 life. Notably, this does not get around One Ring protection, but if you have infinite mana and a meal, chances are you can just do this in their upkeep. You just wait for their protection to wear out. It's not
Yeah,
a
you
perfect
only
answer,
need,
but it's a pretty niche edge case.
as long as you got a couple minutes to demonstrate the loop and let everybody finish it off, and you can probably get there without that being a problem. If you're on the final turn already, well, that's unfortunate. Not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
But
And then I think, as I mentioned, my only other unique outlet would be Walking Ballista that I'm on that you're not, but Walking Ballista is pretty self-explanatory. So
Yes.
oh, I will say this though. If I can get around One Ring protection with White Plume by Throne of Dead 3, the Fairy Mastermind into play.
true.
Eventually,
Put
White
every
Plume
creature
will
in your
put,
deck into play. So
yep, and Fairy Mastermind will then allow me to draw them out, and that does get around the One Ring protection.
Yep. Remember, if you're going to do that, chances are you want Angel's Grace as well.
Yeah.
So.
You could do it with Endurance if you really wanted to. Only to think about the difference between Endurance and Angel's Grace is you risk interaction. If you're not worried about interaction, Endurance is a good card that can be used in that slot instead, because you can Endurance loop yourself while Mastermind drawing. It doesn't matter if they have Endurance in their deck; you can still get them in the right scenarios. But you have to worry about interaction in that case. So
I would also like to mention Savala, the rebel
Trailblazer?
tokens. Yeah, the rebel tokens that are the mercenaries that it makes also have the ability to tap, give target creature +1/+0. So if you do not have finale, but you have a mercenary token with the infinite untaps, you can buff your team with that.
yeah, yes, you can by untapping and tapping the mercenary over and over again.
I will do a quick shill for Charismatic Conqueror and Savala Eager Trailblazer. Token generation in our deck is very good. More tokens equals more triggers equal more value. And that is what we do. The Savala tokens are red. That helps with your Bloom Tender and Fabro stuff. You get lifelink off of these, but that's less relevant. But yeah, the token generation, highly recommend. They're not crucial, but I do think they're very good for our deck.
Yeah, I could agree with that too. It's in my testing board too, Charismatic Conqueror. I just haven't been able to find a copy of it. Same with Savala. I just have not been able to find a copy of it to be able to play, but they are on my radar to test into play.
Do we have closing
anything?
comments?
Do we have any questions from yesterday left that we haven't covered?
I don't think so.
Not that I can think of. Just that this deck is very flexible with however you want to build it. If you want to play the Staxier version, the mid-range version, the turbo version, it can fit any kind of play style. Like we're talking about, there's a version of the deck with Displacer Kitten that you could play. There's a lot of different ways you could build it up.
I think that one of the nice things about our deck is I feel like we've largely solved Derevi. But at the same time, when I say that, it's not like the 4-color, 5-color piles where solved is 97 cards. Solved for our deck is 70 cards. It's a 60-card package and 10 extra lands that you pick. So
As we're talking about, like we're like a good like 20, like between 20-ish cards like apart from each other's deck, and we've had various success with all of our lists. So just being able to play the way you want to play is very very important.
Yep. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'll mention it now. There is a cEDH Derevi Core package on Moxfield. You can literally just take all the cards that we all run and make a new deck, and it'll automatically slot in all 58 of the cards that we're all on. And you can start from there. So if you don't know where to start, that's a great place. If you have questions that we didn't cover in this video, we're all in the Derevi server. There'll be links to that in the primers for all of our decks to kind of help against bots a little bit. But if you, our decks will all be in the description of this video. This spreadsheet will be in the description of this video. If you have questions, come ask. We'd love to chat about it. This is really to help anyone that wants to play Bird. So we're just trying to get the info out there, and hopefully we hear from you guys soon.
definitely. Our DMs are always open.
Well, thank you for listening, everyone, and have an excellent night.
Later.